Photoshop Made Simple, Lesson 1 with Vicki Davis, Cool Cat Teacher. You can't trust what you see. Look behind me. Now I'm in the desert. Now I'm at the North Pole. You can't trust what you see. Well, the first program to do this was Photoshop. So today we're going to do ducks in the desert. You'll need to download the duck that came in the samples folder in Photoshop. For my students, I've put this for you online. And then we'll search for a desert scene and make sure that we follow copyright rules. So let's do our ducks in the desert. So what are we going to learn today? We're going to learn how to find files that are high enough quality to use in Photoshop for your transformation and make sure you have permission to use those. You're going to learn how to cut out this cute little duck here and put him in the desert just like I did. This is my final project. You're going to learn how to arrange windows so you can see multiple images, how to arrange layers, transform images, move images, duplicate layers, move between layers. Don't worry if you don't know what all this is, you will. Add text to an image. You're going to match colors. See how I matched my name right there to that lovely blue? I matched that, and you'll learn how to do that too. You're also going to learn some common traps that cause Photoshop to freeze or be unresponsive. So if you get stuck at any point, you might just want to watch until you get to that point, get unstuck, and then back it up and keep going. Then we're going to talk about how to save the file on the computer and save it for the web. But if you're going to do this project over a long period of time, make sure you do save in Photoshop format, and then you're going to learn how to save it for your apps or for web or for other things. And then we're going to learn how to print an image to fit it on a page. Let's have some fun. So if you need this image, what you need to do is you need to go to Program Files, Adobe Photoshop, and we're using the 64-bit version, and Samples, and you'll see Ducky in there. Now my students will be able to download this from Haiku. Now we're ready to find the desert image. So we're just going to go, I'm in Google Chrome, and we can just type in the Omnibox here, and I'm going to type in desert, and it searches. Of course, we're going to click on images. That takes us to image search, and then we go to search tools, and we want to make sure that we have the rights to use this. Now if you're using it for non-commercial, just as a student, you can do labeled for non-commercial reuse with modification. I'm making a video, and who knows what will happen with this. I always do labeled for reuse with modification. Modification means you can mash it up, and that's what we're getting ready to do. Now when you find an image, you want to make it really pronounced. It needs to be kind of what we call a deep image, so it needs to have multiple perspectives because we're going to have lots of different sized ducks here. And then you're looking for a large image. See how this is 3,553 by 1987, and that's pixels, and a pixel is a little tiny dot on your screen, so the larger the better for Photoshop stuff. So wait and find yourself a good desert image. I'm just going to use this one from Wikipedia. Now I'm not going to right click and copy here. I want to get the biggest image I can, so I'm going to click View Image, and I'm going to right click and save this image onto my computer and just call it Desert, and for Photoshop project. And I'm going to click Save. And now I have my image. Make sure you notice where you save it so that you can go into Photoshop and open it up. Okay, now I'm using a CS5 version. There are newer versions of Photoshop, but that's just what we have here. They're very similar though. You can go to File, Open, and open up these files. So I see the duck that I've created, and there I'm going to go to Open. And then I'm going to go to File, Open, and I downloaded my other items. So I'm going to put that in Dropbox in my junk drawer that I delete every so often. And I'm going to look for my desert here. Let's see if I can find the desert. There we go, desert for the Photoshop. That's the what we call high res version. And you can see it calls it a background. Now where are both of these images? They're right up here at the top. You can see that I have my ducky and my Photoshop. Make sure both are open. Now we're going to want our duck to be in front. So if I'm on desert, I'm going to flip over here to duck. Now you can notice this is a background. That's because it's a TIFF, and I'm using kind of the hardest format so you can see how to do it with a harder format. Now I actually have to make a layer from the background. So I'm going to right click and make a layer out of the background, and I'm just going to call this layer duck. Now one thing you need to remember is that layers, they all go on top of each other. Okay, so now I've turned it into this background, and I'm gonna go over here and look for my magic wand tool, and I'm gonna have to click. Where is it? These things hide sometimes. You have to kind of click and drag, and I want my magic wand. Let's see. Now this is one good way to learn Photoshop, and I always have to relearn Photoshop every time I go in, just because things change so much. I think I missed it, and I'm looking for magic wand tool up at the top. Click. So I'm going to click, and that selects all of the white. Now when this is hard is when you have an image that's not clearly defined, like the duck. And I'm going to press the delete key on my keyboard. Now when I do that, I now see a gray checkered background. That's because it has no background. It is transparent. So that's awesome. So I'm going to go to select image. I'm looking for deselect. Select, deselect, and now I'm ready to go. Okay, so now you should notice that you have this little background like I pointed out. And make sure that the little dots are not running around the duck, because if the little ants, I call them ants, the ants are not running. If the ants are running, you're going to have trouble with this next step. Now, we want to take the duck from here and put the duck in the desert. It's going to look slightly different depending on the desert you've picked. But first of all, we want to arrange our windows. And I'm going to tile the windows and let them go side by side. Now you can kind of collapse this on the right if you want more space, or you can make it bigger. It's just kind of up to you. But I want this to go side by side. Now you have to click. Right now I still have my magic wand tool. I don't want to use that. I want to use my arrow. So I've got my arrow, and I'm going to click the duck, and I'm going to drag the duck over here. Now this duck came out kind of small, which is great. Sometimes he'll come out a little bit larger. And let's go to our next step. Okay, so here we go. We've got them side by side, but we kind of want to go back to having this desert here thing first. So I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to go back to Consolidate All to Tabs. And now I have this on front. If your ducky's on front, then just click back here to Desert, and it'll be back there. Now, I'm still using this thing here. I don't want to do that. That's not what I want. So I'm going to click on select, deselect to make sure that's clicked, and I'm actually going to take this back out so I can see everything over here, because you'll notice duck is on the foreground and the background is the desert. So you've got these two layers over here on the right. Now I don't want this. I want the select. Select lets me move, and I can click and I can move. Now also I can transform, so I'm going to click Show Transform Controls, and when I do that I get handlebars. You'll recognize these from Microsoft Word and PowerPoint and all that sort of thing. And I can make the duck really big. Now, oops, he's not proportional anymore. That means he's kind of getting squished and pixelated. So when I drag the edge, I usually like to hold down the shift, and the shift will keep him proportional. So what we're going to do is we're going to have several ducks. So I want one duck in the foreground, kind of big, and actually what I'm going to do with this duck is kind of take him off the screen so it looks like he's really, really close. Okay, so we're going to do that. And then when we're done, I just hit this again, and it kind of applies the transformation. You really can't do anything else until you apply the transformation. It's kind of a pain. And I'm going to say apply. Well, now I can see that my duck is kind of back to high res again, and he's in the foreground. Well, I want another duck. So over here on the right hand side, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say duplicate layer, and I'm going to call him Ducky 2. And it kind of helps if you name these layers. A lot of people don't, but it's good. And you can't see it. Why can you not see it? Because he went on right on top of the others. Okay, so and remember this, Ducky 2 is on front, but Ducky 2 can go behind too. See how I'm kind of moving the layers, and I can determine where he goes. And I want these ducks to be, oops, I just messed up. I didn't hold down that shift. I want these ducks to be in different levels. So I'm going to say, you know what, this duck is going to go right here in the sand. And I'm going to click this little button right here. And when I click that move arrow, it asks me to apply the transformation. And I'm going to click apply again. Come on, apply the transformation. And now I'm going to go over here. When I click, he's kind of still there. I can move him or whatever. But I'm going to right click and I'm going to duplicate the layer again. And I'm going to call this one Ducky 3. You have to have 5 ducks in your desert. Okay, so he's a little further away. He's going to be a little smaller. Hold down shift. And you have to kind of just play with it of how's he going to look. Okay, I can't move him. Why can't I move him? I need to apply the transformation. Boom. Apply the transformation. Now I can move him a little further. I think I can move him a little bit. Here we go. Let's try to move him. Okay, or I'm going to see if I can grab the move here. He's not moving for me, is he? Edit, undo. It's probably because I have to do select, deselect, but I will try to figure this out. Or I'll just click on a different image and see if that helps. Okay, I think I have to apply the transformation. There we go. Click on a different image. And I'm in transformation. I'm in transform controls. That's why I'm still seeing it. So I can turn it back off and now I can move in more. Okay, so I'm actually moving my front layer. Boom. Third layer, move. So it's kind of good I'm making these mistakes so you can see. So I have to turn off the transform controls to be able to move. And I'm going to click on, right click on Ducky, duplicate my layer, Ducky 4. Okay, remember he's right on top of this other one. I'm going to make him go really far away. And I'm going to show my transform controls. I'm going to hold down shift, make him a little tinier. Goodbye. Okay, I'm going to hit my button here again, apply transform, uncheck show transform, and he's a little smaller there. Okay, he's getting smaller and smaller. And then I have got to have my 5th. Right click, duplicate layer, Ducky 5. There we go. And I'm going to move Ducky 5. Let him go really, really far. And I'm going to make him small. Now, one thing is right now I'm at 25%. I might want to hold down on my PC. I might want to zoom in a little bit here. So you can say, you know what, I'm going to be at 50%. I'm going to zoom in so I can get this one a little bit better. And I can kind of move him around and get him going here. So I'm going to move him a little bit. I'm going to show my transform controls and hold down shift and make him really, really small and apply my transformation. I'm going to zoom back out here at 25%. And just kind of try and move stuff around. And he's a little bitty. He's way out there. Oh, show those transform controls. Now, when I'm totally done, I'll be printing, but you can kind of see this is proportional. These are my 5 ducks in the desert, and you'll be kind of doing something similar. When you're happy with your ducks, go to the next step, and I'll show you how to print in a way that'll fit it all on one page. Okay, so now we're going to add our name to our artwork. Don't get confused in the next step after this because I actually forgot to add the name, so I went back and added this later. But you do want to have your name on your artwork. So I click the little T, that's the text button, and I'm going to click here, and I'm just going to type. See, I have a new layer over here on the right, and I'm going to type Vicki Davis. Oh my goodness, it's so small I can't see it. If I just double click the T here, it's going to kind of select that text. And I can make it larger and larger. And I'm going to kind of let that be good. Now, here's a little trick that makes things look wonderful in Photoshop. If you see, anytime you see a color, you're going to get this cute little eyedropper. So you want to pick a color. When I click boom, that actually makes it that yellow, that lovely blue color. Boom, I could do the yellow, I could do the red. Red never really looks very good. Now see if I did that, oh, that blends in too much. So I'm actually going to click the color of the sky and kind of leave it like that. And the eyedropper lets you select the color, and you want to have your name there on it. Let's say OK. And now we're ready to save and print. It's real easy to get stuck in Photoshop. Like right now, I want to go print. Well, I can't. It prints grayed out. So that means that something's in there. Something's kind of stuck. Well, I can look and I can see the little check here. A lot of times if I click that button right there, the move tool, it will kind of get rid of that. Also, if I click on Ducky and say I'm transforming Ducky here, oh, I'm on Ducky 5. Let me go to Ducky 1. I'm on the first duck here, and when I click Ducky and I can move Ducky and everything, but when I show transform, like say I move him just a tad, now I can't do anything. So if I go to file, see I'm grayed out again. I can't do much. And see there's the little check again, and that wants you to apply or commit the transformation, and I can hit check and do that. Now there are a couple other things that are really helpful in case you make a mess. There's the history, and the history shows you all the last stuff that you've done, and you can actually, I just added this on top of this other stuff since I'm not using it right now, and I can click and delete different things that I've done with this little trash can. So if I want to get rid of that last free transform, I can trash can it and delete it, and I can kind of go back further and further and further as far as I want to. See, as I go, it just kind of deletes. Well, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go all the way back and bring it back. So that's one of the coolest things is it has pretty much saves every single piece of what I've done in this session. Now, if I close it, it's not going to remember. It's just remembering this session. And remember, you can click between the layers. That's another thing that drives people crazy is between the layers. And also remember, if you've got this transform controls on, that you can't really move stuff around. So these are some of the most common mistakes that will get people tripped up in Photoshop, and if you can just remember those, you can really do a lot. And you know, the last thing is if you want to really work with one layer and hide these other layers, you can actually click this eye right over here and kind of hide layers as you work with the layers, and then do more with it, which is pretty neat. Now there's so many more features in Photoshop. Just remember one other thing is if you zoom out and you want to move around, you've got these scroll bars. You can move things up and down, and you can zoom in a whole lot. There are also these things called hotkeys, and you can look up here and see what they are and get a lot closer. And I'm going to zoom back out, and this is just how I do it. There's so many ways to do things in Photoshop. And just remember, this is a pretty large file. So when I save, there's a couple things I want to do. First of all, I want to go to File, Save, and I'm just going to save it as a Photoshop file. Okay, so this is going to end in PSD. It could end in PDD, but probably going to end in PSD. And I'm going to call it that. Now, if I'm not crazy about understanding extensions, then I'm just going to put Photoshop at the end so that I'm not worried about that. And I'm going to click Save. And I'm just going to say OK. Now, if I want to save it for the web, I would go to File, Save for Web and Devices, and it's going to pop up a little screen and it's going to calculate how long it has to go. Now this is a huge image. It's 3,553 pixels. It's actually taken a while to render, and rendering just means to kind of take it and look at what it wants to do and that sort of thing. Now, optimized means to make it more compressed and that sort of thing. And typically it's going to show you, you know, how long is it going to take it to, here's our optimize. It's huge. We're not even able to see the thing. So 800 by 600, a lot of the graphics are usually that's enough. If I just change it to 500, you can see now it's fitting much better. You want to make it small enough to fit on a screen. Okay, so you'll do that and you'll hit save, and this tells you how long is it going to take to download. Now, 28 seconds, that's at 58, that's a 58K modem. You're not going to do that, but you know, I'll usually kind of set it to be there. 5 seconds, that's still pretty high. You know, you could say 512 and it's going to get to 4, but these are kind of some high numbers, so you could take it down if you wanted to a little bit. There's PNG, there's JPEG, there's all these other formats. JPEG is a little bit more compressed. So you know, just kind of work with it, see what you want to do. And then you can hit save, and you can save it for the web. So this is going to be my web version, and I usually add this to the end. Now, one thing you'll notice is that when you save, A lot of those versions will go in there, but right now I've still got the Photoshop version open. So I'm going to go to File Print because I want to print this out. And when I go to File Print, sometimes it will take a little while for that print to come up, just because it's calculating and that sort of thing. So I'm actually going to pause for a minute and let that come up. Okay, so let me give you a few notes about saving. Now, when you save in this PDD or the other Photoshop format, um, those formats are Photoshop. So the layers are saved. So if later I come back to it, think of it like this pizza. If I come back to my Photoshop file, all the layers are there. And if I want to get rid of one of the ducks, or if I want to get rid of one of the layers, I can just delete it, and then I can produce it again. But what happens when you save in another type is those layers are all taken and they're baked together. They're fused together, kind of like this pizza. It would be really hard to take some of these layers off and say, okay, I'm going to pick all the pepperoni off. Can you do it? Yeah, but it's a mess. Can you take these green peppers off? Yes, but it's a mess. It's much easier to take them off over here. So what you do is make sure that you always have this Photoshop file. So what are my recommendations? Save 2 copies. Always save that original Photoshop file. Save it all the time. And always open that one to edit. Always, always, always. Open that one, edit that one, use it. Because it's kind of like going in and taking those other layers out. And then save the final file for the web or whatever tool you're using. This one will go into your publication. So it's for the web, it's for your newsletter, it's for the annual, it's for your family trip, whatever it is. That final edited Photoshop document is going to be the one that goes in your publication. But you want to keep the original Photoshop file so you can edit. And I hope it makes it clear that if you save 2 copies, you'll be much happier. Now just remember, when you get ready to print, it's for this high res stuff, it's probably going to be slower than a one-legged dog on tranquilizers. So you need to know that you're going to have to wait a little while for that screen to come up. Now make sure you have your printer picked. But see, you're only seeing a little piece of this. It's just going to completely run off the page. So you want to check scale to fit media. Well, I kind of want to flip it around. So you'll have to look in your settings. I'm going to hit print settings and it should come up. It may take forever. And I can flip it in here. I can change it to black and white or such. And I can change my orientation here to landscape. Landscape means sideways. The other place I can do it is right here. So I can just click that button as well. And that's going to make it print out. And I'm going to click, I can hit done, or I'm going to hit print. And it's actually going to print it out now, and my students will turn it in their folders, but it kind of gives you a little piece of artwork where you've morphed 2 things together. The trick is we used a ducky that had a really defined background. Anytime you have a defined background, it makes it easy to cut. That's why we shoot against a solid color. Usually, used to it was blue screen, real bright blue. Now it's this what we call chroma key green, and you can actually go to Walmart and pick up that fabric and shoot people behind it. The only thing is, you'll notice if you go to the very beginning of the video, when you saw me and I chroma keyed in video, I didn't have really good lighting and there wasn't a lot of contrast between me and the background, so it kind of gave me something called a halo effect. So you want to make sure it's really high contrast, and you definitely don't want to have any green on if you shoot against green, because then it'll cut out your shirt. So we'll learn more about this later, but this has been a great first lesson. If you've made it this far, awesome job. Feel free to go back and review as you follow the steps along. Sometimes people just like to watch it once and then go back and do it and pause it. But here are the things that we've covered. We've actually done a lot in Photoshop. First of all, we talked about where we can find files that are high enough quality to use in Photoshop. Remember, you want to go to the image, you want to make sure it's large enough, and you want to make sure you have permission to use those images. Then we learned how to cut an image out so we could merge it with another image after we duplicated the background. We used the little magic wand tool, cut out the background, and got it ready to merge and move. And then we arranged our windows so we could see multiple, and then we went back to tiling our windows again. Fourth, we learned how to arrange those layers in Photoshop because the thing on the top is always in front and the thing on the bottom is always in back. A lot of times we want to move those around. Also, remember the tip I taught you about naming those layers. Makes life a lot easier. Then we learned a whole bunch of things: transforming images, duplicating layers, moving between layers. And remember, when you duplicate those layers, they come right on top of the other layer. So sometimes you'll want to have to move it. We learned how to add text to an image, and then we learned how to match colors with the eyedropper tool. Then we also learned some of the things that cause it to look like Photoshop is stuck. Things are grayed out. You can't print. You can't do this. You can't do that. You're usually stuck in transform mode and you need to either hit the check or click the move arrow. Those are two ways to kind of get that done. But when you freeze, you just want to look around that screen and see what it is you hadn't quite finished. It just won't let you move forward until it's finished with what it's doing. We talked about how to save your file on the computer. I always recommend saving the Photoshop file and whatever format, because if you don't, if you save it as a JPEG and you just open it back up, you won't be able to edit anymore because that smashes all the layers together. So you want to make sure you save it in the Photoshop file. And then we also learned how to print an image to fit on a page and also to be patient when it printed. Good job. You have just learned a little bit about Photoshop.